So, how is it that B2B brands can stand out? And in the case of like Miller, have real passionate customers who bleed blue, basically, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Big time. I mean, there's people with, you know, Miller logos tattooed on their arms and things like that. So there's a lot of passion about the brands for sure.
All right, so here we are for the latest episode of the LoSasso Integrated Marketing Podcast. Today, our special guest is Jake Weiss, who is Senior Brand and Creative Services Manager at Miller. Is that a fair title for you these days?
Yeah, I actually just kind of got pivoted over to be brought in to lead and set up our integrated agency. So acting more as like an integrated creative studio rather than just like a creative services team. So came in as the brand manager and creative services manager, as you mentioned, but built out the brand strategy and mapped everything out. And now we're kind of investing in this integrated creative studio, and it requires, as you know, quite a bit of work to get there. And so that's what I'm focused on right now.
Yeah. I mean, I really wanted to talk to you because of your brand, background, certainly at Miller, but even before that, maybe you want to give us a quick rundown of your history in the brand world.
Yeah, absolutely. So my path is not necessarily a straight one. I actually grew up in Wisconsin, Fond du Lac, and after high school, wasn't quite sure where I wanted to go, but family was artists and writers and things like that, and joined the Marine Corps. Went off to serve in the military for a little over 4 years, and got out, and not the natural progression, but went to art school. So I went to Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design in Milwaukee, and then after that worked in several agencies in Milwaukee, and ended up in Appleton because my wife's job got transferred up here. But I reached a certain point where I enjoyed the work, but I wanted to have a little more input and a bigger role to play on the strategy side of things. And brand has always been fascinating to me. It's I'll talk about brand for hours, but it's the embodiment of a business's soul, really. So wild kind of ride to get here, but what I love about the two worlds of the creative side and the brand side is it's the brand as a persona and a strategy to follow, but then there's the creative side where it's sort of the persona applied and employed with its identity itself. So it's a full circle. But moved up to the Appleton area, worked in a couple agencies up here, and then eventually found myself in-house at Aaron's company, where I was a number of roles. But throughout that time, same thing that I'm doing here, built an integrated creative studio, but also established a really strong brand strategy for that company as well. And similar to ITW Welding, it's Aaron's company as a kind of overarching kind of hierarchy, and then there's family of brands underneath that. So I was able to touch the brand strategies and identities of Aaron's, Gravely, some of the UK brands is like Countex and Westwood as well, and built an in-house studio there, and was there for about just about 9 years, and then came over to ITW Welding, where I'm just doing the same thing here.
Now, on the Aaron side, was that more consumer facing, or was that kind of a B2B play as well?
It was both. So it's a complex monster when you start talking about the outdoor power equipment market, because you have your B2B, your B2C, your B2B2C. I mean, you got the full scope. And so you're in the retail environments, you're in the direct sales environments, and then you have your dealer based. And so there's a lot of different channels to play in there, and it's a little complex, especially when you introduce the seasonality of it. There's snow in the lawn season, which are always variable. They're different across the continental United States. It's a lot of chasing weather patterns and making sure that you are where you need to be when that audience is is looking.
So a lot of complexity there, on that side, a lot of complexity at ITW Welding and
Yeah.
Miller in terms of selling into having a lot number of divisions and selling into a lot of different markets. I think
Yeah.
one of the things we wanted to really talk about today was how do leading B2B brands like Miller really earn trust and inspire belief in the market, right? So there's a ton of brands out there. There's a lot of products and a whole lot of information nowadays online. So, how is it that B2B brands can stand out? And in the case of like Miller, have real passionate customers who bleed blue, basically, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Big time. I mean, there's people with, you know, Miller logos tattooed on their arms and things like that. So there's a lot of passion about the brands for sure.
So I think one of the things that's really ultimately important because there's a lot of people out there talking. There's a lot of competing brands out there. Is building trust, right?
Yep.
With more access to information than ever, what are the things that you're seeing B2B brands do that really help to build that trust with an audience that makes that connection?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a great question because it comes back to authenticity, right? And amongst a number of other things, right? Like you have to adapt and evolve with the technology that emerges. You think about generative engine optimization and things like that, which are all relevant. But it's all a touch point, and so there's a lot of choices out there. There's a lot of noise. There's forums, there's reviews, there's AI, and I think there comes to a certain point where it's analysis paralysis for the customer to be sifting through all that information. And so I think it's a number of things. I think that's where brand plays best is, having an authentic, genuine voice that actually understands the daily life of their audience, that is actually involved in their workflows and, actively, having and engaging in conversations around, where their challenges are, um, where the opportunities are, where we can improve. And that's, one of the main things that go into our process here is that customer back innovation.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're always listening. Miller needs to be the brand that's in the trenches, working shoulder to shoulder with our customers, until the job is done right. And so I think that's something that is a big differentiator for us when it comes to, you know, making those decisions a little easier.
So that customer back innovation is a great, concept in terms of like, okay, we're not going to build a technology and then push it at you and tell you, hey, this is what is out here and you should be using it. Saying, okay, what is that market looking for and needing, right?
Right.
And I know that definitely informs sort of the product side and the technical aspects.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel like that also informs the brand personality and your understanding of the sort of emotional piece of what it means to be in the market and have certain challenges and needs?
Yeah, well, I think it's you mentioned it earlier. We serve a lot of different segments of the market, a lot of different niches, and it's never the same kind of scenario. There's a lot of different factors when it comes into the purchase cycle, and so there's the fabricators and the small shops to the automation engineers and the integrators, procurement ops people. And so it's really understanding what the a day in the life is for them, right? Really flexing that empathetic muscle and then understanding how we need to show up and being genuine behind it, not just for the sake of, saying what we think they want to hear. It's just got to really mirror what Miller stands for. And so that feeds into everything from, our tone of voice to, certain channels that we might even show up on. I mean, there's a
Mhm.
lot of different factors to that, but, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So, we look at it all holistically.
In terms of understanding that welder, I know one of the things that you guys have done a good job with the Miller branding and the evolution of it is that you really focus on the welder in a way that a lot of other B2B manufacturers sometimes get a little too focused on their products, which, it's a baseline. You got to have great products. You got to be solving problems. Um, but that sort of connection with the welder, can you talk a little bit more about the approach that you guys are using?
When it comes to and just to clarify, you're asking, how the brand kind of plays into the personal side of the welder's life.
Yeah, and really showing that connection. I think there's a piece of it where when a B2B audience feels like a brand really sees them and gets them,
Oh yeah,
it really builds a different sort of credibility and connection than, you know, giving them what they need in terms of a product, but not necessarily them feeling like, okay, these guys, they're with me, right?
yeah, yeah. It's it comes back. I always say it, like a dog can smell a dog, right? You know when somebody is being authentic and genuine in the conversation that they're having with you, and when they're just giving you kind of the information that you want to hear. Where we try to be very unique and different in that aspect is to embrace, the lifestyle of any one of our customer profiles, right? So it could be, we know that a welder in a fabrication shop is one way. We know that somebody who's sitting there trying to think through automation, engineering, and putting these systems into these complex scenarios are in another place. So we really want to understand what their challenges are, what the opportunities are for us, and really be able to speak that language authentically. And so we've done a lot of work to try and understand those customers really well. Some of these areas we're still learning because they're so new, especially when it comes to automation. But we always flex that empathetic muscle, and we try to really inject the passion that we have for not just the product, but for the industry and the work that these individuals are doing on a regular basis, because it's not just the product, right? Like at the end of the day, you have to look at the impact that this stuff has. And so when you take a step back and you look at, like a SpaceX shuttle going up into space, and that one of our products has had a part of that. That's pretty impressive. And so, there's a lot of factors that go into that, and it's not just one person; it's a group of people. And so Miller acts as the expert who can not only be on the shop floor but also in the boardroom speaking to executives and things like that. It's sort of the everyman, a social chameleon of sorts.
Mm-hmm. I think there's something cool about, it is a little different if you're talking about, somebody building out an automated welding system, right? In a tier one manufacturer, right? At the
Right.
same time, there's a sort of just a badass sort of passion in welders and welding, right? Because it's about putting stuff together, building and creating things, right? And kind of like
Yeah.
being a problem solver.
Right.
And it's kind of that emotion and passion for going up against challenges in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
right? A lot of times you see welders in pretty stressful situations. They're hanging off the side of a building, whatever it is, lots of different situations where they just have to get in, figure out how to get it done. And they want to have tools that really are there and going to work the way they expect them to work,
Right.
and not let them down. So that's
Yeah.
kind of a key piece of it too, I think, is saying, hey, we understand that this isn't, easy work, right?
Right.
And that you're passionate about it, and we're going to be there in a way. We're going to show up for you the way you show up for the work.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's important. I think it comes back to, it's a competitive market, and welders, these business owners, they can go to any brand, but I think they come back to Miller because, to your point, right? Like at the end of the day, their name is on the line, and they need to make sure that they can trust the brands that will actually not just get them the product, but will deliver even if things go sideways, right?
Sure.
Long after the purchase has been made. So it's there's that post purchase experience that is really important in all of this.
And talk to me a little bit about sort of that post purchase Miller experience. You're talking just about the product usage, or are you talking about even the support and things that go into the follow up?
Yeah, I mean, like our product is well respected and it's reputable, but what what you can never plan for is the stuff that goes sideways, and it's inevitable. It doesn't matter who you are, what brand. I've seen it happen, across the board, where something will go sideways, but it's your response to that really makes a difference. And it actually, I would say, in many ways, seals that loyalty to a brand in the way that you respond to a problem or a challenge than just always kind of um, you know putting out new product or the latest shiny thing. And that's where I go back to CBI and customer backed innovation. It's such a critical component. It's all stuff that been with the company for a year and a half now, but you see how wildly relevant it is, and you can see why we are so successful in what we do because of that listening aspect. And so it goes into the product development side of things, but that's full circle, and it's a full cycle of doing, listening, improving, and cycle kind of continues. But we have great customer service. We're all based here in Appleton at our headquarters, and there's folks picking up the phone, and they're doing the hard work of finding those solutions for any range of problems. So our customer service is above and beyond for sure.
Just interestingly, just from my perspective, as somebody who's kind of on the outside and starting to work with you guys in the last year or so, is there's a piece of your product and the way you sort of bring it to the channel and inform them that sort of really helps enable them, I think, in a way too. But back to sort of like understanding the audience, I know, one of the challenges across all kinds of different manufacturing sectors is also just sort of having the skilled labor,
Mm-hmm.
to do work. And on the welding side, that's, that can be simplified operations in terms of how the products are set up, right? But that's also like understanding when, manufacturers are going to need to have products that less experienced welders, for instance, can work with. So I know that
Yeah.
there's just a whole sort of ecosystem of challenges that you really have to be dialed into and be able to address, which on the surface, you want welders to know that you get it and what their
Right.
welding challenges are. But there are so many different, to your point before, so many different roles and buyers, and it's
Yeah.
really needing to understand kind of that whole environment, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. No,
Uh,
there's a lot of different products that kind of, the Miller-Matic is like a, set and go kind of thing that's, built into, our infrastructure of our, um, product offerings. But there's, it spans the range. I sit in on some of these meetings, even, when we talk about, some of the software side of the business when it comes to, specifically on the automation side where, they're thinking about even just you know, the user experience and the user interface. And there's so many different aspects of that so much thought goes into that you didn't even realize until you had a chance to actually absorb it a little bit.
uh, there's a lot of, educational content that's in the market these days that is really important, right? As opposed to in the old days, right? It was
Mhm.
all, here's my product sheet, here's my specs. It's very much about, hey, here's an application for this, or here's how you do this thing. How important do you think that kind of informative content is in terms of supporting this sort of brand identity?
Well, I think it's important because it gives you permission to enter the conversation. But it's really what you do with it, from there that determines whether you're trusted or not. And, you can be the smartest person in the room and still be completely unhelpful. So, I think what expertise does is it gives you that license to speak. And again, um, there's a lot of other factors that go into it, but it helps, start the conversation for sure.
Sure. And I think there's a giving aspect to that says, I'm not just in here trying to get your purchase. It's like I'm trying to be, important player in this community, right?
Right.
And that's helping people understand how this is applied and why it's a good solution. Uh, that said, I think there's also a ton of that content where sometimes people can almost push that too far and lose some of the, what do we call it, old fashioned brand magic. So
Yeah.
I think the sort of educational piece of it is totally critical, but then there's still that element of like, uh, how do you show the market that you get it, you get them, and just make them feel good about the brand, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you sometimes you just want to walk away just amped up about it, you know? Um, I can think of any number of things that I've purchased where I'm like, I'm either hunting for an answer, getting further frustrated, or you're looking for an answer. You get it solved, and then you just get back into loving the brand again. You know?
Yeah. And oftentimes in that kind of a situation, when you go ahead and finally pull the trigger and it's something that you feel good about, it's a real good feeling, right? To be like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm putting my, sort of dollars behind this thing I know is a fantastic product. And that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's something to be said about um to your point earlier, there can be an inundation of too much of that, right? Like where you drown out your own content with information that isn't either completely relevant or easy to find, or you're not getting to your answer quickly enough. I mean, I think that's where some of the things as we look forward, with some of the AI and generative engine optimization is going to come into play, and that'll make things easier. But it's a balancing act of how much is too much, and when is there not enough.
Yeah. Um, so Miller is obviously a market leader.
Mhm.
Um, uh, in terms of the benefits of that from your perspective, like what advantages do you see being a market leader, and where does that sometimes put you at a disadvantage,
Yeah.
maybe?
I mean, there's always, brand equity behind that, right? Like if you're top of mind, that's awesome. You can't ask for a better position than that. It gives us, a ton of liberty to, delve into, the product and, having those conversations with customers, and actually, being a strong competitive force within the market, but that, also can, catch you up a little bit. I think there's always a risk of resting too much on your laurels. Um, it's kind of like a race in cross country where leading the pack isn't always the best, right? Because you want a line of sight to how you get in front. And so I think that competition is very healthy for us, and being a leader in this market is always going to be, present for us. I have no questions about that. But it takes a lot of time and thought and uh, you know mind share within the organization to ensure that we're all, being honest about it and saying, are we showing up the way that we really need to show up right now? Uh, are we doing the right things, or are we taking for granted that we are a leader in the market? We're not, um, you know, dropping our rope a little bit.
Looking ahead, knowing you've got a strong brand position now, but sort of ideally, if you could see, a year or two into the future, what would be the sort of ideal way you'd like people to describe the Miller brand?
I would hope that they're looking at the Miller brand and saying like they're truly a partner. They're not just out there selling us, product and having that kind of simple transaction. They're, you know we're we're there, like I said, in the trenches, shoulder to shoulder, making sure that the job's done right, and that they can rest confidently that they can put their name and their reputation on the product that we put out there, and the brand name that we hold.
Pretty cool stuff. I will tell you that again, as a partner who's started working with you guys in the last year or so,
Yeah.
you can really see the sort of passion internally for the brand,
Yeah.
uh, things you bring to market in a way that's super exciting to work with. So definitely looking forward to lots of good stuff in the future together.
Yeah.
Uh, and super appreciate you taking a little time with us today and
Yeah.
talking about it. Anything else you'd like to wrap up with?
No, I mean, I think, I will go back to, it's not a simple thing to translate a brand into an authentic, genuine output, right? And that empathy is the hardest tool to acquire in your tool set. And just the ability to capture that and translate it into the work that needs to live out in the world is a challenge. But you guys have done a really good job of that. I think there's some exciting new things coming out that will exhibit that. But it's not an easy thing, and so when people can pull it off, and agencies can pull that off, it's a real treat. So
I certainly appreciate that. I would reiterate too, it's a lot easier when the raw materials you're working with feel, very genuine and authentic. And that's been one of the real fun things so far, is that everyone really loves working at Miller and is really passionate about it and about, putting out great products. So super fun.
Yeah, outstanding.